I might ask that you turn off or silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. Good morning, and welcome to this year's Defense Logistics Agency Hall of Fame induction ceremony. My name's Kathy Rem. I'm the Communications Manager for DLA Human Resources and your MC for today's ceremony. Please rise for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the presentation of colors by the Military District of Washington Color Guard, the singing of our national anthem by Army Sergeant First Class Robert Berner from the Military District of Washington, and the invocation by DLA Chaplain Colonel Robert Wishman. Present the colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Halt! Right shoulder on. Halt! Holster on.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you're the one that establishes leaders. You are the one that increases our efforts, and you are the one that designs our lives and transforms organizations in our nation. Lord, meet with us this morning for this Defense Logistics Agency 2019 Hall of Fame ceremony. We give thanks for this year's inductees, individuals who transformed this organization and promoted permanent change for future generations. Use the contributions of our inductees to inspire future DLA leaders to raise us to the next level. Lord, help us as we honor this year's inductees, their families and friends, and thank you for all those who worked so hard to make this event a success. Bless all who are in attendance, and bless and protect America's sons and daughters who are deployed across the globe in the defense of freedom this day, we pray. In your holy name we pray it. Amen.
Please be seated. A special welcome to Lieutenant General Darrell K. Williams, Director of the Defense Logistics Agency, Command Master Chief Sean Bromstead, DLA Senior Enlisted Leader, our Hall of Fame inductees, their family members and friends, past Hall of Fame inductees, current and former DLA senior leaders, and employees of the Defense Logistics Agency. Today, we honor 6 former members of the DLA team who demonstrated unique and enduring contributions in support of our mission. Their contributions helped shape DLA into America's premier combat logistics support agency, a mission that we all proudly execute. They are true representatives of the DLA spirit, and it is our privilege to honor them today. This year's inductees are Ms. Laura Conrad, Vice Admiral Mark D. Harnachek, U.S. Navy retired, Major General Michael J. Lally III, U.S. Army retired, Ms. Dorothy H. Lohr, Mr. Patrick J. McCormick, and Ms. Sharon L. Murphy. The inductees will each be presented with a medal and a commemorative plaque. In addition, they will receive a congratulatory letter from the DLA Director, a DLA Hall of Fame lapel pin, and Director's coin. Each inductee's spouse will also receive a certificate of appreciation. Before we begin the formal inductions, please join me in watching a special presentation highlighting the lives and careers of this year's Hall of Fame class. Our host for today's ceremony, Lieutenant General Williams, directs an organization responsible for providing a variety of logistics, acquisition, and technical services to the military services and other federal agencies in peace and war. This worldwide mission is performed by 27,000 military and civilian logistics professionals. Please welcome the DLA Director, Lieutenant General Williams.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start by giving that color guard and our national anthem singer a round of applause. Don't they really set the ceremony? Just a phenomenal job. And so thank you. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2019 DLA Hall of Fame ceremony. We, myself, the entire team, are thrilled that you could be here to participate in today's ceremony. And so it was a philosopher from Zimbabwe, Mr. Matt Shona, who said that in a world of game players, the only way to set yourself apart is to be a game changer. And today we will induct 6 more game changers into the DLA Hall of Fame, bringing the total inductees to 117 since its inception. These inductees collectively served a total of 994 years of federal service and 142 years of service in DLA. And so if we add these years to those of our previous Hall of Fame inductees, the total would come to 3,756 years of federal service and 2,555 years of service to DLA within our Hall of Fame. Absolutely phenomenal. And so for all of our inductees today and those past, I would ask you to offer them a round of applause. Absolutely phenomenal. And so we search both far and wide for the trailblazers and the innovators who pioneered a lot of the practices that we still have today. And in many cases, we still use them to support our warfighters in our nation. We find the leaders within DLA, the pathfinders, the visionaries, whose contributions have led to the agency that we know as the nation or Americans Combat Logistics Support Agency. And so I want to thank you for being here to help us honor and to celebrate the legacy of excellence and exceptional service to our nation of this year's inductees. Thank you for that introduction very much. I want to say thank you to the chaplain again, who also set the stage. Again, I want to acknowledge the Military District of Washington and that Joint Service Color Guard, the vocalists, and the team this would not be an event at all. It certainly would not be successful with our mighty J1 team, who puts this on every single year. Now, I've only been here for 2 years, and yet this is my 3rd Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and it's always done extraordinarily well. And so I want to thank Mr. Brad Bunn and the entire J1 team. And I want to thank Ms. Denise Norman, the protocol that is involved in making sure that everyone gets welcome into the building in the proper way and finding their seats and so on, all add to the quality of our ceremony. And so thank you. We have a number of special guests today. I want to recognize Vice Admiral Retired Keith Lippert, who's here. Sir, I know you're here somewhere. Thank you for being here. Vice Admiral Retired Thompson, I believe I saw you out there in the audience. Thank you for coming. I noticed that we have several of our former vice directors that are here today. Thank you for being here today as well, gentlemen. Mr. Mike Scott sends his regards, our current vice director. He got called away to the Pentagon for some emergencies that are happening there. And so thank you all for coming today. I want to recognize our Command Master Chief, who's sitting on the stage. Doesn't he look great, ladies and gentlemen? Let's give that sailor a round of applause. Looking great. And then to all of our major subordinate command commanders, thank you all for being here to represent your commands, the agency. Where you are is where the real work happens, and so thank you for being here. And to all of our DLA workforce, our other Tier 3s, SESs, the DLA workforce, former Hall of Fame inductees, and I'd like to give a special shout out to the family members of all of our Hall of Fame inductees that are present within the audience today. A round of applause for them too. Thank you. And so, distinguished visitors, fellow general and flag officers, senior leaders, members of the DLA family, and if I forgot anybody, please charge it to my head, not to my heart. Again, thank you all for being. That brings us to this year's inductees to the Hall of Fame. This is their day, and so at this point, let's give them their due.
It is now our great privilege to present the 6 newest members of the DLA Hall of Fame. They'll be inducted in alphabetical order. Our first inductee is Ms. Laura Conrad.
Okay, before I talk about the inductees this morning, I'm going to ask the audience a few questions as I bring them up. And I'll start with the sport of basketball. And so where is the Hall of Fame located for the sport of basketball? And to save you some time, of course, it's Springfield, Massachusetts. Enshrined in the Basketball Hall of Fame are the likes of Wilt Chamberlain, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Pat Summitt, the legendary coach of the Tennessee Volunteers, who won 8 NCAA championships. And so that's all great. But nobody can finger roll, as George Ice Van Gerven used to say, like Laura Conrad, who served in DLA and the Office of Secretary of Defense for 33 years. Laura joined DLA in 1981 as a secretary, and before long, she was working as an analyst, working on IT systems that improved DLA's weapon system support. In the 90s, she served in tactical roles, managing significant programs, and she improved DLA's business processes. Laura assumed supervisory responsibilities in 2000 and as chief of planning and order fulfillment, process areas, and then enterprise business systems process integration. She continued to lead efforts to improve our DLA systems. She went on to serve as the Deputy Executive Director of Material Policy, Process, and Assessment, where she administered doctorate-level human and budget resources. She also established a certification program that has helped to professionalize our DLA workforce. Laura spent 2 years at OSD in the Supply Chain Integration Office, where she was a key leader in implementing the Comprehensive Inventory Management Improvement Plan. She culminated her career in 2014 as a senior IT program manager with over 3 decades of truly game-changing service to the Defense Logistics Agency in our nation. By all accounts, Laura brought her team to victory by executing a full-court press on DLA's modernization efforts and contributed greatly to the success of this great agency.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage Ms. Laura Conrad.
Another round of applause, please.
Good morning, everyone, and special call out to a few of my fellow retirees who, for strictly selfish reasons, I invited with me because I've been retired for 4.5 years and I didn't know if there were going to be any familiar faces in the audience, so I wanted to know a few people. So Lynn, Dan, Fran, thank you very much for coming. Kind of have 2 simultaneous thoughts here. First being, actually, there are more familiar faces than I thought. What's with you people? You're either a lot younger than I thought or you're not retiring when you can. Don't do that. The second thought, again, simultaneous. Oh man, I still hate public speaking. So hopefully I'll get through this without too much stammering. When I first joined DLA, I was a secretary in the newly formed Weapons Systems Support Office. And very, very curious. I came over from Navy, and the guys in that office, for they were all guys at that time, took me in and made me feel like I was an integral part of the team. They didn't mind my nosy questions about why you doing that, what you doing, who do you work with? And they just encouraged me. I had one guy who even showed me the whatever kind of program it was that he wrote to develop the first statistics for weapon system coded items in DLA, which came in handy because I later used that program. After a few years, they strongly encouraged me to apply for the supply intern program, which was centrally located at the time in Columbus, Ohio. So away I went to Columbus, 6 months of classroom training, 6 months on the floor with an inventory manager and some great people there who, again, just always seemed so patient with me asking questions, because I ask a lot of questions. Came back and worked in what was then the Fuels Supply Center, and then ended up coming back to headquarters in the same weapons systems office where I had been a secretary. Stayed there until I got a call from another Hall of Famer, Ann Bradway, who was my branch chief when I was doing my OJT training in Columbus. She says, Ann, I'm at headquarters now, working in this consumable item transfer office. Would you come over and talk to us? And it turned out I kind of had the skill sets they were looking for. And for those of you who don't know about that big effort in the 90s, which is where I spent the bulk of my time, this group of people, was a BRAC decision to transfer item management of over 1 million items from the military services to DLA. So as you can imagine, there was no controversy there, right? So the group of people that I got to work with from the DLA field activities, there just aren't enough superlative words for me. It took almost a decade to do that transfer, along with all of the issues and games that were played and, you know, just hot-headed discussions that we had. But they took me in, they taught me the process, and we became quite the team that not only transferred all of those items, but then afterwards, with, I think it ended up being 1.1 or 1.2 million items, we had to then balance our own workload within DLA, so we had all of those reassignments to do. And then about that time along came this effort called Business Systems Modernization. SAP doesn't really have an application that transfers management of items between companies, so we had to design and build that. And again, the same group of people, largely it stayed the same, unflagging cooperation and energy, and just a great group to work with. I was looking at some of the pictures earlier about former DLA Hall of Famers, and I remember when I saw Frank Lotz, made me think of Art Dean, who I worked with down at Richmond during all that time. He would call me if he was at an impasse with the services and tell me what the issue was, and last line uttered when I knew he was at the end of his rope was, "And that dog won't hunt." Classic Frank Lotz line that was often used. And in Philadelphia, I knew I had been accepted into the group wholeheartedly when my name got shortened to one syllable. And no matter how big the issue was, if I got the phone call, "Yo, Laura, we got something to talk to you about," I had to smile. How could you not? So, like as I said, that was the bulk. That was probably 15 years of my time with DLA. And then moving on, again, with gratitude for a very curious person, promoted into supervision, eventually ending up as Kathy Cutler's deputy when she, as much as she could, came to darken my door with her little slip of a self and saying, "Would you be my deputy?" Okay. Never a dull moment in that office. You can imagine in J33, I guess what is today J34, the breadth of topics was immense, from item introduction to disposal and everything in between except procurement, and lots of interfaces with procurement. So I was never bored. Sometimes stressed, but never bored. Then on to OSD for a year or two, till I once again got a call. "Hey, Laura, it's Kathy Cutler. I'm in J6 now. You want to come back and help me with something?" So things weren't moving stellarly in OSD, kind of making progress at the rate of molasses in January on some of the projects. And then I started thinking, I got a 12-mile commute that takes me 45 minutes to an hour to get to the Mark Center. Or I could go back to DLA and do my 6-mile, 15-minute commute. Kind of a no-brainer. And maybe I can get something accomplished, substantive, before I retire. So we did. She offered me several things. The one that stands out, because I remembered thinking I may have been born at night, but it wasn't last night. She offered me the lead for the auditability team at J6. Ew. I ended up taking the front door process, which had started being worked on as a single portal for all new requirements, IT requirements, and changes to existing applications. So we got that designed and implemented before I left at the end of 2014. So I felt good that I had accomplished what I had set out to do before I retired. So that's kind of my time at DLA. Since being retired, oh, and hopefully I have dispelled this myth. My last week at work, there were some folks who came up from me to say to me, I think it was about 3 people, said, well, we heard you're going to be returning in March anyway. And I thought, I don't know where in the world that started. Because I'm going to be looking for work when I retire, and I'm still not looking for work. Because retirement, it's pretty sweet. I got 3 people with me who can attest to that. So I don't make you take up any more of your time. I appreciate y'all being here, because I know y'all have busy days. And just want to say that it is an honor, and I am very, very grateful to be nominated and to have been selected to be part of this austere group. Thank you very much, and I hope to see a lot of you in the reception.
Our second inductee is Vice Admiral Mark D. Harnachek, U.S. Navy retired.
Okay, next question. Where is the NFL Hall of Fame? And of course, it's Canton, Ohio. NFL inductees Terry Bradshaw, Joe Montana, Dan Marino, one of my favorites, were impressive in their day, but no one completed touchdown passes like the DLA quarterback, and I mean director, Vice Admiral Mark Harnachek. I must admit, for me, this is a special one. There is no higher honor for a current director than to welcome a predecessor and former boss into the Hall of Fame. Mark's tenure as DLA's 17th director was marked by numerous business initiatives, exceptional warfighter support, and incredible humanitarian assistance and disaster relief efforts that forever enhanced DLA's value to the warfighter and to the federal government. Mark set the stage for improved efficiency and dramatic cost savings through implementation of 4 lines of effort: improved customer support, decrease direct material costs, decrease operating costs, and right-size inventory and infrastructure. These 4 lines of effort included dozens of programs and data-driven solutions, including 13 and 6, which reduced DLA's material and operating costs by more than $3 billion in 2012, 13, and 14, and programmed an additional savings throughout the following 6 years. Under Mark's leadership, DLA brought full support and services to bear upon and after Super Hurricane Sandy in 2012, and in support of the Ebola crisis response effort in Liberia in 2014. And in the aftermath of Sandy, DLA deployed personnel to work directly with FEMA, the United States Army Corps of Engineers, and the state disaster coordination centers to begin logistics operations. DLA provided fuel, meals, bottled water, blankets, cots, maps, hypothermia prevention kits, portable X-ray machines, and removed more than 35 million pounds of trash and debris. DLA's highly visible response to Sandy set the template for future disaster response events and was personally recognized by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the mayor of New York, and the President of the United States. I could go on and on about Mark Harnachek, but suffice it to say, he was DLA's Pro Bowl caliber quarterback who led our team to some incredible victories. Before the culmination of his 39-year Navy career in 2015, he cemented his legacy at this agency, and he truly deserves to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Harnachek.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage Vice Admiral Mark Harnachek and his wife, Mrs. Betty Harnachek.
Okay, round of applause.
Well, good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Good to see you all. It's great to be back. General Williams, thank you very much. Good morning. And again, thank you to you and your wonderful staff. Good morning to all my old DLA shipmates, my fellow Hall of Fame inductees, and all of my very, very good friends. Thank you so much for this great honor. I have to tell you, it's pretty cool being in the DLA Hall of Fame, and here's why. Do I get my blazer now? Brad said there would be blazers. Guess not. You know, Betty and I had the privilege of serving in many, many great commands, but I have to tell you, DLA was the best in terms of superlatives. It was the big league in terms of logistics. It had big ideas. It did great things and had a perfect record of fixing tough problems. There's really nothing like DLA in the entire Department of Defense, or frankly, on the planet. You all are a national treasure. When the country called, and they called a lot, DLA responded with eternal optimism, endless enthusiasm, and a commitment to get big things done. There is no problem in logistics that cannot be solved, overcome, or overwhelmed by the great crew at the Defense Logistics Agency. The people in this room, the folks in the audience on the stage with me here today, and all of those who have gone before simply said, we can, we will, and then succeeded in whatever they were doing. The DLA crew is a rock-solid, no fanfare, make it look easy group of logistics professionals. And I have to tell you, it was a thrill to watch the show that you all put on. It was a joy to serve here, and I was honored when I was in uniform and grateful to tell people that I was the director of DLA. As country singer Keith Urban said in one of his songs, who wouldn't want to be me? If I have one feeling today, it is an overwhelming sense of pride leavened with a very healthy dose of humility. I am proud to have served with all of you, but very, very humble in the knowledge that the accomplishments that were in my citation that General Williams just read had very, very little to do with me. They were instead the actions of this great agency and the imaginative, innovative, and hardworking great Americans who serve here. I simply happen to be the guy sitting in that office on the second floor with the big windows who asked a few gentle questions about how we might want to do things a little better. I remember during my time at DLA being asked quite often at conferences or in interviews, Admiral, what keeps you up at night? And the questioner was invariably anticipating some thoughtful answer about some cosmic problem which I would describe at length, for which there really was no solution. Instead, I would respond that I sleep very well, completely confident in the knowledge that the people of DLA will find a solution to any problem. Pick a problem anywhere in the world. If it remotely resembles logistics, I could guarantee DLA would figure it out and win. And when I think about the DLA Hall of Fame, much like General Williams just did, the comparison to a sports Hall of Fame always comes to mind. So I'll ask you a question of my own. How many Hall of Fame coaches or players would guarantee and then win every game? Not many, actually none. but that's what we do at DLA, and that's all we do is win. And that winning tradition continues today under General Williams' terrific leadership as DLA focuses on effective and efficient solutions to tough issues around the world. Betty and I thank you for this very, very great honor. God bless you all, and God bless DLA.
Our third inductee is Major General Michael J. Lally III, U.S. Army, retired.
And here's our next question. And so where's the Baseball Hall of Fame? And of course, it's Cooperstown. The Baseball Hall of Fame features sluggers like Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, Reggie Jackson, but nobody hits it out of the park like DLA Distribution former Commander Mike Lally. 2004 to 2006 timeframe, when Mike served as the commander of DLA Distribution, it was an extremely challenging time, an extremely high up-tempo and increased workload in support of the global war on terrorism and operations throughout the Middle East and indeed throughout the globe. DLA's forward stocking plans required the establishment of 4 new distribution depots located closer to our deployed troops, including Camp Arifjan, Kuwait, Sigonella, Italy, Guam, and in Korea. In addition, Mike stood up the very first deployable distribution team, sounds pretty familiar, that could provide disaster relief response capability within the continental United States. The agency now boasts 9 different types of expeditionary teams, thanks in large measure to Mike's leadership and innovation. On the operational side, numerous performance indices spiked in dramatic and positive fashion under his leadership. Also, Mike's concern for the workforce resulted in unprecedented improvement in the culture and climate survey results. Mike culminated an Army career in 2013 as Assistant Deputy Chief of Staff of the Army G4. He was a revolutionary thinker and transformative leader, a home run slugger who brought continual victories to the warfighters, to DLA, and to the Department of Defense. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Lally.
Please join me in welcoming to the stage General Lally and his wife, Mrs. Jennifer Lally.
Lieutenant General Williams, thank you for those kind remarks. One of the keys to success is to work with great people. As the 3rd Sustainment Command Commander in Iraq in 2008, I was very fortunate to have Colonel Darrell Williams as one of my Sustainment Brigade commanders. Watching him in action in northern Iraq was amazing. Cool, calm, decisive. A true logistics expert, providing timely and effective support, and a superb combat leader that created the environment so that his units and his people, his soldiers, DoD civilians, and contractors were all highly successful. I knew Darrell was destined for greater and bigger things, and DLA is in good hands. Thank you. I'm very honored to join the DLA Hall of Fame, and especially happy to be one of the 2019 inductees. Pat McCormick, sitting down here in the front row, was my J3 when I was the commander of DLA Distribution, or at the time we just called it DDC. Pat was the driving force in our successful global distribution organization. Pat, thank you very much for your support. Vice Admiral Hardachek and I crossed paths several times in our military careers. We were both at U.S. Transcom. I was the J3, and he was the deputy commander. And we had some very interesting and challenging times during that tour. While I was the Army's deputy G4, Admiral Hardachek was the DLA director, and again, some very interesting times as we responded both to support to the warfighter and some incredible domestic relief operations. We always ensured soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine, and Coast Guardmen, wherever they were deployed, were properly supported around the globe. Vice Admiral Lippert here in the crowd, he was my DLA commander when I was at distribution, and he promoted me to Brigadier General. But more importantly, sir, you provided superb guidance and intent, and gave us the latitude to accomplish our mission. For that, I thank you, sir. Ms. Phyllis Campbell here in the audience, Ms. Twyla Gonzalez worked with me and enabled DLA distribution to be successful. My time was one of the highlights of my Army career. We had exciting and challenging missions, supporting our global forces during the global war on terror, responding to natural disasters, standing up new distribution centers, including the deployable capability. I was always impressed with the ability of our men and women, military, civilian, and contractor, to provide timely and quality global distribution support. I learned how to support U.S. forces around the world with timely, precise support, especially when requirements were vague and undefined, but everyone knew immediate action needed to be taken. I worked with men and women who made things happen. We took awesome strategic capabilities and made noticeable impact at the tactical level and the point of need. I learned how to leverage our unbelievable commercial supply chain through agile contracts and agreements, and to provide effective support during peace and war. In closing, I gained a tremendous respect for the logistics experts throughout the Defense Logistics Agency. Global supply chain issues are tough and complicated, but the PhDs in logistics that work in DLA, they figure it out, they decisively implement actions, and ensure U.S. forces, wherever they are deployed, receive rapid, precise, high-quality support. Thank you for the honor and privilege of being part of this world-class team.
Our fourth inductee is Ms. Dorothy H. Lohr.
Okay, I know you'd be disappointed if I stopped with the sports analogies there, so I'll keep going. Okay, so where is the Tennis Hall of Fame? That one's probably a little bit harder, but I'll save you some time, and it's Newport, Rhode Island. And so the Tennis Hall of Fame features the likes of Jimmy Connors, Arthur Ashe, Chrissy Evert, Martina Navratilova, but we've got an inductee today who served nothing but aces when it came to developing policy over a 45-year career at DLA. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, 45 years at DLA Aviation. Dorothy Lohr was an exceptional resource for DLA Aviation. She would frequently be consulted by the headquarters and the other major subordinate command, and she earned the nickname, the Wizard of Policy. Dorothy was one of DLA's foremost experts in federal, DOD, and DLA acquisition policy. She began her career as a steno secretary at the Defense General Supply Agency in 1967. Over the course of her long career, she led the implementation of innovative acquisition procedures and forged the way for acquisition reform. When the Department of Defense dependent schools was given their own procurement authority, she was assigned the major project of writing the headquarters acquisition procedures. Dorothy also worked special projects and was known throughout the agency as the subject matter experts in many, many different areas, and she mentored, trained, and coached more employees than any of us could count. Dorothy retired in 2012 as a procurement analyst after 45 years of service to the agency. She was a trailblazer charting unknown territory, and always executing the overhead smash solutions for extremely complex problems for our agency. Ladies and gentlemen, Dorothy Lohr.
Welcome to the stage to Ms. Dorothy Lohr and her husband, Mr. Philip Lohr.
Well, I have a few words. It won't roll out on the floor. I guarantee it's just a few words. General Williams, DLA family, honored guests. This recognition is very special to me, and it's an honor I'm very grateful to receive. Being in the company of my fellow and former inductees with their accomplishments is very humbling, especially after all the wonderful things I've heard today. I'd like to thank Donna Carter, Eileen Wilk, and Teresa Kirsch for their role in my nomination. I'd also like to thank my husband, Philip, for his unfailing support for over 48 years. He's put up with a lot. I traveled a great deal. I was very young when I joined the DLA family in 1967, and believe me, we are a family. We were in the middle of the Vietnam era. Managers at Defense General were mostly veterans from World War II and Vietnam, and they knew firsthand the importance of our mission, and they wanted to make sure I knew as well. Always give your best. The troops depend on us. It was my good fortune to work with and learn from some of the DLA's most talented professionals. Frank Lotz was one of those that I worked with early on in my career. Projects often involved operations other than procurement, which helped me understand those operations and how they interfaced. As I gained experience and assignments became more complex and diverse, it kept the work fresh and interesting. It was exciting, challenging, and a privilege to contribute to implementing DLA's most innovative initiatives: acquisition streamlining and reform, business systems modernization, improved our efficiency, and helped optimize support for the warfighter. BRAC transferred procurement responsibility for depot-level reparables to DLA and realigned service support as DLA satellite offices. It's been over 50 years since those veterans reinforced my first lesson. Give your best, the troops depend on us. Today, I thank them for their guidance as I thank you for this honor. I'd like to take this moment, if I could, to thank the men and women of our armed forces for your service, your sacrifices, and for protecting our freedom. May God bless.
Our fifth inductee is Mr. Patrick J. McCormick.
And so who knows where the NASCAR Hall of Fame is, right? And of course, it's Charlotte, North Carolina. And in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, you'll find names like Dale Earnhardt, Cale Yarborough, Richard Petty. But we've got our own high-speed driver in Pat McCormick, who spent 16 years in senior leadership on the operation side of DLA distribution. Having risen through the ranks as a warehouseman starting in 1976, Pat took the helm of distribution logistics operations in 1998, managing 25 distribution centers. Operation Enduring Freedom began in Afghanistan in 2001, and as former DLA distribution commander, Lieutenant General retired now Kathleen Gainey described it, Pat's ability to handle the stress, the five-fold increase in workload, and develop new ways to solve complex problems for the distribution challenges that we faced was absolutely phenomenal. Pat was instrumental in ensuring effective stock positioning and improving overseas customer support through the establishment of overseas distribution centers, and some of this will sound familiar, Italy, Guam, and Kuwait in 2004, Korea in 2007, Afghanistan and Bahrain in 2010, and Djibouti in 2012. Pat's leadership was invaluable to distribution support to disaster relief in response to Hurricanes Gustav, Hannah, and Ike, and in 2008, and Hurricane Sandy in 2012, as well as Operation United Assistance in 2014. His efforts significantly benefited combat operations as well. He led DLA Distribution Kandahar in Afghanistan to begin receiving, storing, and distributing the mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, or the MRAPs. He also spearheaded the use of Army serviceable excess material in support of U.S. forces in Afghanistan, culminating a career in 2015 as Director, DLA Distribution Current Operations. Pat was the consummate professional whose vast contributions to this agency, our warfighters, and several whole-of-government organizations indicated that for him, every day was a race to the checkered flag. And so, Pat, thank you, and please join me on the stage.
Welcome to the stage, Mr. Patrick McCormick and his wife, Mrs. Patricia McCormick.
General Williams, thank you. That was quite an introduction. And I want to thank you for continuing this great DLA tradition. I hope it lasts for as long as DLA lasts. I believe it's very important. I also want to thank Admiral Jones and Twyla for the nomination. It is by far the most humbling thing that I've had happen in my life. I'm guessing that all the other nominees faced the same problem I did when you're making your remarks, and that is too many good things and too many wonderful people who I owe a debt to fit in this space. And so as I was writing my remarks to thank people, and I would crumble that piece of paper up, and I'd write it again, and I'd crumble that piece of paper up. A voice out of the past came to me, and I heard it in my head, and it said, "Don't pray over it." And what that meant was, from a very good friend of mine, was just get it done. And Phyllis, if you're here, you know, I didn't pray over this. I did for a while, but then I heard you, and I got to it. So what I wanted to say was I boiled these down to about 35 different key points. No, just kidding. Those are really not 35 key points, but one that I was truly fortunate to serve DLA at an exciting time. The opportunities to extend and improve the sports of the warfighter came at an amazing pace, and the magnitude of those changes were something that used to make my head spin. But the challenges of doing that job and the satisfaction of it made that job something we at DLA Distribution truly loved. I'm very proud to say I was able to be part of this great organization, and I'm especially proud of the DLA Distribution family. They are, of course, the huge reason that I'm standing here now, and I hope they all know the depth of my respect and admiration for what they have done and what they continue to do. I want to thank my family, John and Michael, who are here today, and my daughter, Kara, who understood what I needed to do and supported me even when it was inconvenient when I had to do it. And lastly, you'll see my wife did not sit down, and that was at my request, and she's been bugging me why that is. But without her, none of this would be possible. And I wanted to take the opportunity in front of a crowd for the second time in 43 years to simply say, I love you. And thank you for this honor.
Our sixth and final inductee is Ms. Sharon L. Murphy.
Yeah. Tell you what, before we get to Sharon, I tell you, Pat put the pressure on all the spouses out there, huh? Set a pretty high bar now. Thank you very much, Pat. Always raising the bar. But to Sharon, and so who knows where the Golf Hall of Fame is located? St. Augustine's, Florida, and Georgia. So, I'm sorry, St. Augustine, Florida. St. Augustine. The World of Golf Hall of Fame has inducted iconic players with names like Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, Annika Sorenstam, Nancy Lopez, but at DLA we have our own major champion in Sharon Murphy. Sharon began her federal career in 1982 at the United States Army Career Contracting Agency. In 1985, she moved to Defense Fuel Supply Center as a contract administrator. She progressed quickly through the ranks, serving as director of both DLA Energy's Alternative Fuels Business Unit and its Energy Enterprise Office. She established several DLA energy programs, including natural gas, electricity, utility privatization, and energy savings performance contracting. Wow, what a mouthful. After contributing to the success of key DLA energy programs and serving as the Center Senior Procurement Official, Sharon moved to San Antonio, Texas to serve in her culminating assignment as the DLA Energy Aerospace Director. In her role there, she helped create a new supply chain to provide helium support for the aerostat balloons used in surveillance for our ground forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. And for those of you who have been there, you know how important that mission is. Over the next 28 years with the agency, Sharon was an integral part of DLA Energy's transition from a petroleum-based to an energy-based organization. She retired in 2013 as one of the most awarded employees in DLA history, and her impact was absolutely huge. From tee to green, she always shot under par, leading DLA Energy to successful and innovative solutions to meet the needs of the warfighter and much of our whole of government. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Sharon Murphy.
Ms. Murphy's husband, retired Lieutenant Colonel James Murphy, could not be here today. She will be accepting the spouse's certificate of appreciation on his behalf.
This may get emotional when you spend 28 years at a place you love, working with people that you love and respect, and go home almost, well, not almost, every day from either this building or in DLA Energy in San Antonio, knowing that you supported the warfighter and civilian agencies and made a true difference on the battlefield and at home. And for that, I am very proud, very humbled, and very honored to be standing here today. I'll start at the beginning, and Lieutenant General Williams, thank you for the wonderful words. I don't play golf, but if I did, I would work better at improving my game based on what you just said. I told the story this morning. In 1982, I accompanied my husband, who was then a young major at the time. He was going to be XO of a signal battalion in Korea, Seoul, Korea. It was a accompanied command. I had not been in government service at the time, but I saw it as a real opportunity to get into government contracting. So we were in Korea for 2 years, and he extended for a third year, so that when we came back to the United States, I could go to work for DLA. I was in government contracting in 1102, and there was a special executive order. I still remember the name, Executive Order 12362, and it allowed the opportunity for military spouses, spouses of military service members, when they came back to the United States from overseas, to be non-competitively hired into a position, the same grade, the same classification. We came to Virginia. He was going to be at the Army Research Institute. And we wanted to buy a home. And we looked at house prices and said, I needed a job pretty soon. And I knew I wanted to work for DLA. That was hands down. So one Wednesday, I went Building 8, Cameron Station, okay? We were at Cameron Station. I went to the civilian personnel office. Mr. Bunn, you're gonna enjoy this story. It was a Wednesday, and I stood in front of like a window, inside, glass window, and a personnel specialist came up and she said, can I help you? And I said, my name is Sharon Murphy. I've been overseas with my husband. I'm a DOD spouse. Here's my paperwork. I can be hired under Executive Order 12362. I finished that sentence and she said, just a minute. Well, she left me and I was standing there, okay, 20 minutes, and she came back and she handed me a piece of paper. Can you go for an interview tomorrow afternoon? I said, sure, where? And she said, fuels. And I said, what's fuels? Defense Fuel Supply Center. So I interviewed that afternoon with, many of you know him, he's retired, Richard Calloway. Those of you who know Richard know he never made snap, quick decisions. Everything took a long time to be thought over. But he interviewed me, and he said, "Can you go wait in the next office?" I said, "Sure." So I came back. He had somebody come and get me. I came back 30 minutes later, and he said, "I just called your boss, your old boss, in Korea, at the U.S. Army Korea Contracting Agency. And I'm going to recommend to hire you." I said, "Perfect." The next day, I got a call from personnel, and they said, "Can you start Monday?" And I said, "Yes." So within 3 working days, I became a GS-9 contract administrator in the bulk storage program of the Defense Fuel Supply Center. And I loved every minute of it. A couple of years later, sir, you were right, I moved up pretty quick. Probably 1990, I was a GS-13. And my mentor, who back then, mentoring wasn't cool, or at least the word wasn't, talked about very much, Mr. Ed Biddle. And I was in his office, and he and I had a wonderful relationship. GS-15, Deputy Director of Contracting. That's when we were stovepipe, contracting and supply ops. So we finished talking about the contract issue we were talking about, and he said, "I don't know what we're going to do." And I said, "Mr. Biddle," I always call him Mr. Biddle, "what about?" And he said, "We're being pushed to take on this new mission, deregulated natural gas." And he said, "I don't have the manpower." He said, "I don't know anybody who knows about deregulated natural gas or utilities or anything." And he said, "So, we're kind of in a," and I said, "I'll do it." And he said, "You're kidding." And I said, "No." I said, "I would love to do it." I was a GS-13, and so we established a branch of 3 people. I wasn't eligible to compete for the position, so Don Peshka, who's here today, another inductee into the Hall of Fame, he was temporarily detailed to be the division chief of the natural gas division. I did contracting officer, and we had 1 contract specialist. 2 years later, we have a whole division, and we're saving $100 to $200 million a year for military installations who would otherwise get their natural gas from a regulated utility. Flash forward to about 1997. Jeff Jones at the time, who's another Hall of Famer, was Deputy J4, DLA. Well, I knew him and he knew me because he was very interested in the energy side of what we were doing at Defense Fuel Supply Center still at that point. And he calls me in his office. Now, this is an SES, and he's calling it, and it's like GS-15. Oh, my gosh. He said, "Sit down." He said, your boss, the commander knows you're here." He said, "Here's what's going to happen in the next day or 2. The Secretary of Defense is going to issue a Defense Reform Initiative directive, and it's going to task the Defense Fuel Supply Center with doing 3 demonstrations of total integrated energy management." Never heard the word before. What is that? And he said, "You're going to be asked to head it up because you know the energy side of the house." We had already started a deregulated electricity, competitive electricity program. We had done for the Army Energy Office some utility privatization, hadn't had a contract yet, or energy savings performance contracts. Hadn't signed one yet, but we were doing that for primarily the Army. And he said, "So I want you to head it up." And I said, "I have 2 conditions." He said, "You telling an SES you have conditions?" Where was my mind? And I said, "I would like you to bring Mark Iden back from Fuels in Europe to work with me, and it not just be a Mark and Sharon show. I want a whole team within the Fuels Center to help." He said, "Sure." So it was a full-time job, and that's how the Energy Enterprise Office came to be. One of the highlights of my career is as a result of that in 1997, on December 7th, 1997, GS-15 by this time, Sharon Murphy, goes to the Pentagon with Lieutenant General Henry Glisson, Director DLA, and Jeff Jones. And Sharon was to brief the Deputy Secretary of Defense. Do you talk about nervous? Yeah, I was really nervous. So the four of us are in the outer office to Dr. John Hamre, the Deputy Secretary of Defense. And I'm looking at my note. I look up, and this very tall gentleman, grandfatherly gentleman, walks up. He bypasses General Glisson. He bypasses Jeff Jones. And he said, "You must be Sharon Murphy. I've heard a lot about what you and your team are doing, and come on in and talk to me about it." Well, I was no longer nervous. We went and we sat down, small conference table. And I did something that day that probably in retrospect, I don't know. So the DRID, that Defense Reform Initiative directive, directed the Defense Fuel Supply Center become the Defense Energy Management Center. So at the end of the discussion and the briefing, he said, "I'm going to issue another DRID that totally solidifies what we've talked about today. Y'all will take the lead, and we're going to go after more electricity from the military services, competitive electricity, combining loads under the same utility with deregulated electricity, utilities privatization, and energy savings contracts." And I said, "Sir, can I, with all due respect, the Defense Energy Management Center sounds like we're going to be telling the services what to do, the military services." And I said, "My personal opinion, it needs to be a collaborative effort. Could we," and this was the team, Sharon Murphy didn't come up with this, the team had discussed it, "could we be the Defense Energy Support Center?" And he said, "Done." So there was another DRID issued. So I look back on that, and that briefing the Deputy Secretary of Defense was one of the highlights of my career, as well as many other things. In 2001, I was given another opportunity. Kelly Air Force Base was being closed. It was being bracked. And in San Antonio on the Kelly Air Force Base was an Air Force, U.S. Air Force office. It was called Missile Fuels, and they provided all the liquid rocket propellants. At the time, the U.S. Air Force was still launching the Titan rocket, which used liquid rocket propellants for launch, and then supporting NASA with liquid rocket propellants to maneuver the space shuttle primarily, as well as satellites in space. And the Air Force, since Kelly was closing, went to headquarters DLA and said, "We would like to turn this mission over to the Defense Logistics Agency." So at the very high level, that was done. So I went to Mr. Jones and I said, "I would like to be permanently moved to San Antonio and head up the transition from Air Force to DLA, and then lead that mission in San Antonio." And the reason I was able to ask that is I had left behind and would leave behind a lot of wonderful people, many of them who were still in high leadership positions in DLA. I call them my young pups. So then I went to San Antonio. We did some groundbreaking things there too, not criticizing the Air Force, but one of the biggest rocket propellants, hydrazine, had been a sole source for 40 years. We got competition, saved $200 million over a 10-year contract. Our legal office worked so closely with me and our team, our procurement team, to get long-term contracting authority, which I think was like the kingpin of the whole effort. One of the things that I'm most proud of, though, is the direct support to the warfighter that we gave in San Antonio to the helium aerostats. It saved lives daily. The intelligence under the balloon could spot a cell phone 10,000 feet away. And getting helium to Iraq and then to Afghanistan, by the way, was really hard. There was no supply chain. We had to build the supply chain in each of those countries. It was the most challenging, the most stressful, but I think one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. So I want to thank you for this opportunity. I know I didn't mention a lot of people. The room, you could fill the room with people that have worked with me, supported me, our legal office. They'll tell you, every time I started a new program or worked a new program, I always approached it from a business perspective. I have a business degree, so a business perspective. If this was a business, how would I run it? No matter what idea or what I took to our Office of Counsel, Louise Hanson, Kathleen Murphy, Kay Bushman, Greg Zagorn, they always found a way for us to mold the business idea within government contracting statutes and laws. And for that, I've always been very appreciative. So I want to thank you. I'm very honored by this. There's no better way in DLA, what a world-class organization, to end your career and a couple of years after, except with this honor. It's icing on a cake. Thank you very much.
General Williams, the floor is yours for closing remarks.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think you all can see the phenomenal contributions made by these group of Hall of Famers to our agency. If you believe, as I do, that the people are the secret sauce of DLA's success, then it is important to continue to showcase not just those that are currently serving, but those who have made contributions that we still live off to today. And so that certainly applies to the 2019 Hall of Fame class. May God bless each and every one of you. May He bless this great agency. May He bless our warfighters that are deployed into harm's way and the families that support them. May He bless our whole of government partners that all of you support as well. And may He continue to bless the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for these Hall of Famers. Thank you.
Would all of the inductees please join General Williams and Command Master Chief Brumstead for a group photograph? One more round of applause, please, for the DLA Hall of Fame Class of 2019. I invite each of you to a reception immediately following today's ceremony where you can personally congratulate these new inductees and their families. Now please rise and remain standing for the departure of the official party. Then please wait for your road to be released. On behalf of the Defense Logistics Agency, thank you for attending today's ceremony and helping us make this a special event for our deserving inductees.